I don't quite understand why I am enigmatic to George's fans. Apparently he had interviewed and tested almost everyone in Pittsburgh and really wasn't going to use them. They really kind of fell in love with the picture I gave them, and that was kind of it. I'm originally from Western Pennsylvania, and I came to New York to work for an insurance company and decided that was not going to be my profession, so I left and became involved with Clairol, and I literally traveled like 5 days a week with them, sometimes 6, and it became a 24-hour job. So I decided that I would leave Clairol and become a commercial actress, which I did. And then I started doing soap operas, etc. I remember very vividly that I was working in Philadelphia, and my sister called me from my hometown, which is Newcastle, and she said, there's this company in Pittsburgh that's doing a film and they want you to star in it. I said, what? Who are they? Why are they calling me? I thought it was ridiculous that somebody would call me and ask me to star in their film. And so at any rate, I called them up and I spoke to Nancy, and Nancy Romero, who was the wife of George and the producer at that time, she said, you know, George has done this film, which has been very successful, and we have this money, and we are going to be doing several other films. And we're working on one now called Jack's Wife, and we'd like you to come and audition for it. So I went by and I auditioned for them, did a cold reading, and we talked for a long time, and I liked them and they liked me. So they asked me to go home and to learn a couple of scenes and come back. Well, I was living in New York City, and my boyfriend was an actor, and so we worked on these scenes together, and he was very excited about it. And I said, you know, I'm not going to do this film. And he said, why? I said, because there are these nude scenes in it, and I just really don't want to do a porno film. And he said, well, at least go to the audition. I said, well, yeah, I'll do the audition. So I did. I went back to Pittsburgh. I did the audition. And Nancy and George got up and they said, excuse us for a minute. And they went out and they talked for a while, and they came back and they said, well, we would really like to have you do this role. And I said, well, I really don't want to do it because it's going to be a porn film. And George said, no, just trust me. This is, you know, I had to write it that way to get the money. And he said, just trust me, it'll be great. And if you want, we'll give you a body double. I also knew that George was very passionate about this script. I mean, he wrote it, and he and Nancy were both very involved with it. It was his take on women's liberation. And to be honest, I think George would have liked to have progressed in a very different way, do some other things that were not that involved with the horror films. I found that opening, which was a little avant-garde, shall we say, to be very interesting. I liked all the nuances and the way that he got out the message that I was definitely a woman in need. There was one thing, though, that we didn't explain that was in that scene, and that was the baby. And she had lost a baby boy, and that was the baby that you see in the scene. And so that kind of, unfortunately, didn't follow through. That was lost somewhere in cutting. But everything else, I thought it was wonderful, and I loved the fisheye thing. You know, it was very surreal. George, by the way, is not a hands-on director. He wants you to do what you do, bring that to the fore. We did the last scene sort of in the middle of the shoot. You know, I was so nervous because I knew that this scene, more than anything else, was the real determinant as to how the film would be. And I was really frightened and scared and upset, and I said, George, please give me some direction. He said, No, he said, let's see what you can do. Well, I bit the bullet.
I'm a witch.
We started the scene, and we did the scene, and I worked through the end, which is kind of a long, long take on me where George comes in very close on my face. And so we did it, and the scene was over, and George said, okay, that's a wrap. I was, no, I can do better. I know, you know how, I mean, everyone is always insecure about what they've done and want to do better. Anyhow, the next day, we were doing one of the nude scenes, and Nancy came over to me and she said, you know, last night after we did the shoot, George and I had to go to a meeting, and then we had a very late dinner, so we were sitting there having dinner, and George turned to me and he said, you know, Jan did that scene exactly as I wrote it. And I could not believe it. So that made me feel very good. Those sequences where I'm dreaming or supposedly dreaming or whatever, they were physically demanding, because what I would do is I would run up and down the steps, and I would run all around the house. I would run and run and run until we started shooting, and so that I would be really out of breath and scared. They used to laugh at me when I was doing this, but it did help me a lot. And I thought it was scary. You know, Bill Heinzman did a great job behind that mask, and he was representative of all the things in life that that character feared. This was the location that we were using, the home of the Forests. And I think what did it for George, I don't know if you remember the 2 lamps in the family room that were very strange characters, and he was fascinated by those lamps, and he spent a lot of time focusing on those lamps. And I think that was kind of one of the things that he really loved about that house. And it was nice because they were all, you know, the rooms were very different. So we could get different locations very specifically from that. George promised that he would give me a body double. And to be quite honest with you, I don't think I've ever told him this, but by the time we were ready to do the nude scenes, I would have done them, because I did trust him, and I felt that he was, you know, it made a lot of sense if I did my own work. But I was too embarrassed to say that. And so we had a body double. The first nude scene we did was the initiation scene, which is part of the end scene, actually. And the poor girl that was there was like 20 years old. And she came over to me and she said, oh, I'm so scared. I've never done this before. I said, honey, don't worry. Nobody's going to know it's you. They're going to think it's me. And in fact, my dressmaker, a couple of years later, saw the film and she goes, oh, I could recognize that Fanny anywhere. I said, well, isn't that strange, Mary, because you've never seen that one before. And in fact, I have to say, that gal had legs that were huge. That was not my build at all. But it didn't matter. I kept going around telling people I had the body of a 20-year-old.
You know, you're not bad in the sack. Not bad yourself.
Ray Lane was a friend of George's. I liked Ray. I felt he was a little intimidating in a way because he was, I don't know, he just made himself that way. I guess his character was that way, so he made himself that way. But the one thing I have to say that I regret is that I allowed him to interfere with my performance in a very, very crucial scene. That was the scene where I was drunk and I had supposedly conjured him up to come into my home. And Ray had told me that this was the most crucial scene in the film, and he went on and directed me off. This was the night before. And of course, I was very upset. I was always thinking about what he was telling me. And instead of doing it instinctively, which I had done the rest of the film on, I really allowed him to ruin it for me. I'm disappointed with the scene. I'm sure that it's okay, but it's not what I really probably should have or would have done. My favorite scene is in the antique shop. And I don't remember the young man's name who was the dealer behind the counter. But he was just so adorable, and I just loved being there, and I loved how I looked, and I loved the scene. I loved getting those instruments of witchcraft. It was just a wonderful day, and that particular scene I liked more than anything. Now, some really strange things had gone on throughout the filming. Because I'm playing a witch in the film, I mean, a lot of strange stuff that was happening. Some of the scenes I remember with my husband, specifically where he was slapping me around after my daughter had left. I said, Bill, make sure, slap me, do it real. Are you sure? I said, yeah. I think we did like 3 takes of it or something. But he came over the first time and he slapped me. Goes back to stand at the starting point again, and the light falls on him. One of the strange things that happened on that film, as I said, I was playing a witch. So. Another scene that we shot, I think 2 or 3 times, and the film actually never would come out. It did come out finally, I think, on the last shoot, but we sent it away 2 or 3 times. And the first couple of times it didn't come out. And that was a scene where I'm writing the Lord's Prayer backwards. And I always thought that was a very bizarre thing, that scene would not show up on camera. We did the last scene, and it was in a home that was unfortunately in the path of the airport. Anyhow, I get up there, I'm in front of the camera, waiting and waiting and waiting to start because there are these planes flying over. And finally I went, "Bug off!" in a very loud voice. And literally the ceiling cracked. We were all, like, whoa. George had 4 hours of film when we finished making this film. 4 hours he had to cut down. And it was because he was in love with what he was seeing. He would never get off the camera. He was just shooting and shooting. It was wild, but that's the way it was. And I don't think that there was ever a longer version. I think that it was just that he had so much film that it was hard for him to get it down, to digest it and edit it.
Hungry wives with an appetite for diversion.
We made it under the title of Jack's Wife, but it was released under the title of Hungry Wives, which was quite unfortunate. I actually went to Los Angeles and begged Jack Harris, who released it, to please not call it that, to call it Jack's Wife, and to put George's name over the title, because by that time I had gone to Cannes a couple of times and I knew that his fame was worldwide and that if we really wanted to sell this film, it should have his name over the title. But Jack did not do that, and it was an absolute bomb because people went there thinking, again, that it was a porn film, I think. And it was not. It wasn't meant to be that. And it wasn't sold and promoted properly. Nobody saw this film. No one saw this film. Actually, what I've been doing the last 30-some years, I have not stayed in the business. I continued working in New York for a while, and then in 1975, I moved to Los Angeles, thinking I was going there for my career. I made 1 movie of the week for CBS and a few commercials, and I got out of the business. I started buying, fixing, and selling my own real estate. I wasn't a real estate agent. I just bought these homes and redid them, and ended up with a lot of homes under major construction. And unfortunately, Jimmy Carter allowed the interest rates to go sky high, and I lost everything. At that point, instead of going to therapy, I went back to school and got my degree in television production and journalism in California. And once I did that, I moved back here and thinking, well, who's going to be knocking on my door and asking me to be in their film, you know? It's a tough business. It's a very tough business. And I literally have not acted since that time. All I can tell you is I love the film. I think that it stands the test of time. Even though it was not a major production, I thought that he did a good job, and that, you know, if anybody could have seen it then or now, and hopefully this DVD will give them a better look at this film than ever before, that they will see it is a good film. It's an interesting film. I'm not sure what George's fans will take away from the film. I know a lot of them have already seen it. I really hope that a lot more people can see it and keep it in their collection of films. I'm hoping that a lot of friends of mine that have never seen it get to see it. I'm hoping that through this film, I'll have a legacy as well, because most of the things I've done in my life were either, or in my acting life, my acting career, have been short-term events. And this one certainly, as I have said in the last few years, has a life of its own.